Hey guys, tonight we slip into the flickering candlelight of the 13th century, where every shadow whispers superstition, and the line between healing and horror is barely a breath wide. You walk a dirt path that winds through the hills of an unnamed village, carrying a book so tattered its cover flakes into your palm like dry skin. Its pages smell of soot, mold, and a touch of something sweeter, maybe clove, maybe something left too long in the cellar. What matters more is what's inside, survival tips. Ancient, weird, and anonymous. Each one more questionable than the last. You might think you've got good instincts, that you'd survive the Middle Ages with common sense alone. But trust me, you probably wouldn't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you right now. Midnight in Missouri? Dawn in Denmark? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake with a rattle in your lungs. It's not a modern rattle, the kind you'd Google and book an appointment for. It's the heavy, wheezing scrape that makes nearby hens scatter. People call it the Black Breath. Plague season. Again. Your mother doesn't look at you when she pushes the scrap of parchment toward your hand. You don't need to read the words, you've memorized them. Everyone has. Step 1: Cabbage. You shuffle to the garden barefoot. The morning air is wet and stings your throat like cold vinegar. You kneel in the mud, reach past a clump of snails, and pluck the largest leaves you can find, still slick with dew. According to the book, the leaves must be crushed with river stones and warmed slightly by breath alone, not fire. Fire, apparently, upsets the herb's humors. Your sister watches you from the doorway. She's 9, but her eyes are older than stone. She's already seen too much. She tugs her scarf over her nose when she sees you binding the cabbage mash to your chest with twine. You're supposed to lie still after, let the leaves draw out the miasma. The evil air, they say, causes the plague. Not germs. Not rats. Just bad vibes in the wind. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly believed miasma was the root of all illness or whether it was a convenient explanation for suffering they couldn't otherwise explain. Either way, you smell like a compost pile trying to perform a miracle. The air is strangely silent. No birdsong. No merchants. Even the dogs that usually bark at passing carts have gone quiet. You remember what old Greta said 2 nights ago. The quiet always comes before the coughing starts. The cabbage itches. It burns a little. But you don't dare remove it. A traveling friar once claimed he survived the plague twice by sleeping between 2 salted cabbages and fasting on rainwater. He died of dysentery the following year, but that part rarely gets mentioned. Inside, the book lies open to the margins, where someone, probably your great-grandmother, scribbled a note in crooked Latin. Breathe not before cabbage does. You repeat it under your breath like a spell, or maybe a dare. Outside, the wind changes direction. It smells sweet and metallic. You press a second leaf to your throat, just in case. A modern reader might scoff, but the truth is, cabbage does have antimicrobial properties. Whether slathering it on your skin during a pandemic helps? Highly unlikely. But desperation rarely asks science for permission. You close your eyes. The ground shifts under you, or maybe that's just your chest fluttering like a frightened bird. You remember hearing of nobles in Italy stuffing their masks with lavender and myrrh, walking among the dead like scented shadows. You didn't have access to lavender. You had cabbage. You wonder if anyone's ever been mourned with the words. They smelled like salad, but they tried. Just as you begin to drift into uneasy rest, a knock sounds at the door. 3 taps. Then silence. Your mother doesn't move. Neither does your sister. You breathe shallowly. Carefully. You imagine the cabbage catching the sickness in the air like a net. You imagine it blackening instead of your lungs. You imagine living to see the first frost. You try not to imagine anything beyond that. Outside, the knock comes again. You don't answer the knock. No one does. You wait until dusk, when the last embers of light soak the stone walls in ochre, and only then does your mother open the door. No one's there. Just a small bundle left on the threshold, tied in cloth, weighed down with a smooth river stone. She doesn't touch it, not yet. She sets a candle by it, watches the wax drip down the edge like a warning. The bundle stays there overnight. By morning, it's gone. You take it as a sign. A bad one. Maybe the plague came in through the keyhole. Maybe it's already in your sleeves. That's when you remember the next passage in the book. You flip the pages with cabbage-slick fingers, each leaf sticking slightly from damp. There it is, scrawled in crooked, ink-blotted Latin. To cleanse the garments of spirits, bury them where no bird sings, and no ox has trod. Translation: it's laundry day, and your clothes are haunted. You peel off your tunic, rough spun wool, stiff with days of sweat, ash, and the greenish tinge of cabbage oil. You carry it down past the goat pens, through the thinning grass, to a patch of dirt behind the chapel. You know the spot. No birds go there. Not even the crows. There's something in the soil, maybe old bones, maybe older curses. Historians still argue whether this practice was symbolic, an offering to the earth to absorb sin and sickness, or just a desperate attempt at hygiene when soap was as rare as gold. Either way, you begin digging with your hands. The soil is cold and clings to your fingernails like damp bread. You push the tunic into the earth like you're planting something that should never grow. Then you cover it with soil, pat it down, and whisper the words from the book. Out of fabric, out of flesh. It doesn't rhyme. It doesn't need to. You say it again, slower. When you stand, your fingertips are bleeding, but you don't feel it yet. You glance at the chapel windows, where someone is watching. A shadow. Or maybe just the stained glass reflecting wrong. You wonder if anyone in your village actually believes the clothes carry wandering spirits. Or if they just need to believe something can be controlled. You remember the story of the man who burned his linens every Thursday and was the last in his family to die. They say he survived because he slept in the nude and buried the ashes beneath his bed. That part never made it into the priest's sermons. Back at home, your sister's cloak is already bundled by the door. Your mother's too. You offer to do theirs next. There's something comforting about burying things. About pressing something into the earth and pretending it'll never come back. As you walk again to the chapel grove, a strange thing happens. A woman in red passes you. You've never seen her before. Her hair is long and gray, knotted with feathers. She carries a bundle of fabric, soaked through and dripping onto her feet. She doesn't speak, just smiles, one corner of her mouth higher than the other, and disappears behind the north wall. You tell yourself you imagined her. But the ground where she steps smokes faintly, as if the soil's breath has turned visible for a moment. You bury the second tunic. Then the third. You press the fabric deep into the dirt, layering earth over it like cake frosting. You whisper new words. Not from the book. Just things you hope the earth understands. Please take it. Please keep it. Please leave us alone. One footnote in the book claims that a French healer named Benoit once exhumed buried tunics to test if the ghosts had departed. He died choking on his own tongue 3 days later. So you decide, no digging anything back up. Ever. When you return home, your sister asks if the earth felt warm. You lie and say yes. She smiles and falls asleep by the fire. You wake again before dawn. The book lies beside you. Pages open, curled from the damp air, ink nearly faded in parts. But one line gleams in the candlelight. Someone must have retraced it in charcoal. Spirits, like stains, sink where cloth remembers touch. You wrap yourself in a fresh tunic, one of the last clean ones. It smells like mildew and moss and something else. Hope, maybe. Or the lie of it. Outside, the wind begins to shift again. You wait to smell cabbage on the air, but this time it smells of ash. You count the tunics buried beneath the chapel grove and wonder if the earth keeps track. You wake to silence. Not the good kind, like snow-muffled roofs and sleeping dogs. No, the silence is stiff. Hollow. The kind that makes you press your hand to your chest just to be sure your heart hasn't given up too. No birds. No wind. Not even your sister coughing in her sleep. The book rests where you left it, open to a new page, though you're sure no one touched it. The ink is darker here, deliberate, like someone wanted this part to endure. It's titled with only 2 words, Boil Iron. You frown. Underneath, the scribble continues. Boil thy blade and drink not of it. Pass the steam o'er thy face when sickness curls behind thy eye. So, medieval spa day? You drag yourself out of your straw-stuffed mattress and shuffle to the hearth. The fire has long gone out, just gray bones of yesterday's wood. But you've got coals buried in ash, still warm, like little red eyes refusing to close. You coax them back to life with dry twigs and a whisper. Then you fetch the knife. It's not really yours. It belonged to your uncle, back before the fever took him mid-sentence. the blades notched from use, the handle smoothed by years of gripping. You place it in a pot of water and stare while it simmers, watching bubbles gather on the edges like thoughts you don't want to finish. The smell hits first, rust and old blood, faint but unmistakable. You don't drink it. You just lean forward and let the steam curl up your face. It burns a little, stings the eyes. But somehow, it feels good. Like something angry inside you just lost a round. Historians still debate whether this method was rooted in medical understanding or sheer desperation. Some argue it resembles Islamic steam purification rituals brought to Europe during the Crusades. Others say it was the fever's hallucination transcribed by trembling hands. What's certain is, people believed iron held memory, and boiling it could release or cleanse that memory. That might be why you're not alone. You don't hear footsteps, but you feel them. The creak of the floorboards behind you. The way the air tightens grows aware. You turn your head, slow, too slow, and there she is. Your mother. Standing, not breathing. Watching the pot like it's something precious. Her eyes are glassy, pupils too wide. You call her name. She doesn't answer. Then she speaks, but it isn't quite her voice. It's stretched thin, like parchment left too close to flame. He left it in the garden. You blink. What? But she's already gone. Not out the door. Just gone. You knock over the pot, scrambling to stand, hot water licking your feet. The blade clangs against the stones. When you grab it, it's still scalding, but you don't drop it. You look around. Nothing. Just your sister, still asleep, mumbling something in a language you don't know. You don't remember her knowing anything but rough village French. You step outside. The air is sharper now, tinged with something metallic. The mist hasn't lifted since dawn. You carry the knife to the garden, just rows of weeds now, limp leaves and blackened soil. And there it is. Half buried, under the twisted remains of a cabbage stalk, a strip of wool cloth, gray, etched with tiny, careful script. Not in Latin. Older. You run your thumb along the lines, and for a second your hand goes numb. You blink, and the sensation's gone. You bring it back inside. By firelight, the letters squirm, only when you're not looking directly. You hold the blade above it. The steam from earlier still dampens your brow, and somehow, this feels like a test. You whisper the words you do know, ones from the book and ones you make up. Memory be gone. Memory go. The cloth shifts. Only slightly, like breath beneath skin. You don't touch it again. Some fringe scholars believed iron bound spirits. When sharpened with fire, and boiling such tools released what the weapon learned from past acts. That sounds ridiculous, until you remember where your uncle got that knife. Not from a butcher. From the wars. The knife had seen things. And maybe, just maybe, it remembered them. That night you bury it. Not deep, just enough to lose it. When you wake, your mother is back. Stirring porridge like she never left, like she never floated away mid-sentence. She hums a tune she hasn't sung since your father died, and your sister no longer mumbles strange prayers in her sleep. But the book is still open to that page, and the ink is wetter than before. You try not to look at the book, but that's like telling yourself not to notice a loose tooth with your tongue, or to ignore the shadow that doesn't match your body. It pulls at you. Even when your hands are busy mending the chicken coop or skimming mold off cheese, your thoughts circle back, again and again. You glance at it while pretending to sweep. Another new page. The ink shifts subtly in tone, fresher, darker, like it's never had time to dry. The words are slanted, crowded as if written in haste. The title sprawls wider than the others, as if trying to leap from the page, so dead mice into your boots you pause, broom frozen mid-sweep. Well, that's new. The note beneath reads, "For when rot rises from the marsh and sickness creeps in through the soul, thou must confound the devil's path. Place mice underfoot to deceive the decay." Right. Because medieval people looked at disease and said, maybe what I need is vermin footwear. But you feel it. That pull. That weird sense that if you don't try this, something worse might happen. After all, your mother is humming again. Your sister isn't speaking in backwards riddles anymore. Something changed. The knife is gone. The iron boiled. And whatever ghost had its claws in your house seems quiet. You know better than to assume that lasts. You don't go hunting mice. That would be too obvious. Instead, you check the root cellar. The traps you laid for grain thieves still hold a few unfortunate volunteers. You choose the two smallest, gray, curled, stiff as bark, and wrap them in linen, trying not to gag. Their little feet poke through. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you remind yourself that historians still argue whether this was genuine folklore or a satire scribbled by a monk with cabin fever. Some say the idea of using dead mice to confound rot comes from older Eurasian pest rituals, placing offerings to plague spirits beneath one's step. Others believe it was symbolic, a way to feel like you had control, even when you didn't. You don't care anymore. You just want the nightmares to stop. So you thread the mice into the soles of your boots, carefully, reverently, like you're hiding a sacred relic. The effect is immediate and horrifying. They squish slightly when you walk. You whisper an apology with every step. At first, you feel ridiculous. Then you notice. You step outside, and the air that once clung to your chest like wet wool now parts cleanly before you. The bog mist that stung your eyes yesterday no longer bothers you. Even the dogs, usually silent and sullen since the fever spread, perk up as you pass. One even follows you a ways before stopping short and whimpering like it's afraid of your shadow. At the market, just a scattering of tables near the well, you hear things. Hushed things. A man swears his crops turned black overnight. Another says his baby cries in a woman's voice after dark. Someone else mentions finding claw marks on the church door. You don't mention your boots. But one old woman, the baker's widow, blind in one eye, sniffs the air near you and says, "You've walked wrong." Her eye rolls toward the ground. You've changed your tread. You leave before she finishes her bread price. When you get home, your boots feel heavier than before. Not with mud. With presence. As if the mice aren't quite as dead as they were that morning. You sit on the stoop and unlace them slowly. The linen is damp. The little bodies have softened, reshaped themselves subtly to match the curves of your foot. They no longer feel like strangers. They feel like something else. That night, the dreams return. But not your own. You see through small eyes, skittering through walls, chewing through parchment and rope, dodging blades and cats. You feel hunger, deep, endless, animal hunger. And you smell the rot. It's everywhere. Not the rot of corpses, but of something older. Like time itself turning soft. You wake with the taste of oats and blood in your mouth. Your boots are still by the door. You almost throw them in the fire. Almost. But when you touch them, the leather pulses. Once. Like a heartbeat. And you understand something you wish you didn't. They're protecting you. From what you don't know. But it's close. It's always been close. And maybe, just maybe, walking on something that remembers crawling is the only reason your own feet still move. One fringe historian suggested these mice boots weren't just protection, they were a tether. That the wearer bound themselves to the lowest thing, so nothing lower could take them. That walking with death beneath you confused whatever darkness sought your soul. You decide not to ask questions. Instead, you hang the boots by the door like talismans. You barely notice that the book has turned again. The book doesn't wait for permission. By the time you glance at it again, half a day later, while chewing through a heel of bread and staring too long into the fire, it's already changed. It always does that when you're not watching. Maybe it doesn't like being seen. Or maybe it's just polite enough to turn the page when you're distracted. Either way, the new heading is impossible to ignore: sleep in a grave every seventh night you swallow dryly. Not because of the bread. The note underneath is written in smaller, tighter letters than before, as though someone was whispering through ink. Lest thy soul grow sweet to the hunger beneath, thou must lie with the dead, masked in stillness, masked in cold. You set the bread down. You're not sure when this turned from an odd book into a manual for staying alive. Or sane. Or human. But now, it feels less like you're reading and more like being read. Like each page sees a little deeper into your life. Or your nightmares. Because last night, you dreamed of voices rising from the fields, singing, off-key and distant. When you woke, you swore you saw footprints on the thatch. Not yours. Too small. Too many. And now the book tells you to sleep with corpses. You pace. You mutter. You consider throwing it into the well, the fire, the marsh, anywhere. But you don't. Because deep down, you're starting to suspect the book never came to you. You came to it. You try to be practical. You don't dig up the churchyard. That's madness, and anyway, Father Renard already watches you too closely. Instead, you go where nobody buries anymore, the old field behind the burned abbey, where plague took root 2 generations ago. Nobody visits. Nobody tends it. Perfect. You bring a blanket, a lantern, and enough resolve to make yourself lie still between 2 mounds where grass barely grows. The first thing you notice is the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses on your ears, too dense to breathe through. As if even the worms hold their breath when you settle in. Then the smell. Not of rot but memory. Old iron. Smoke. Herbs dried and long forgotten. And something else, faint, powdery, like bones ground to dust and whispered through time. The earth is cold, but you stay. You count your breaths. You let your eyes fall shut. You listen. And then, something brushes your side. You freeze. Not a hand. Not an animal. Just pressure. The weight of being watched. Or mirrored. Or mimicked. You think of the book's warning. Masked in stillness. So you stay perfectly still. Not sleeping, not moving. Just present. Like a decoy soul. That's when you feel it. Another breath, not yours. Faint. From below. Then another. Shallower. Then nothing. Gone. The weight lifts. The cold recedes. Something lets go. You sit up slowly. The lantern's oil has long run dry. Your blanket is damp. Your hands are pale and trembling, and your boots are crusted in moss, though there wasn't any when you arrived. You go home in silence. The next morning, your mother hums again, louder now. Your sister eats. The chickens have returned. Even the old hound by the hearth lifts its head for the first time in days. And you? You feel scraped clean. Not better. Not healed. But untouched. One mainstream historian speculated this odd survival rite came from old Celtic death customs, bards and druids who spent nights in barrows to learn the speech of the dark. Another claimed it was simply a way of confronting fear, like how soldiers sleep on battlefields to make peace with death. But fringe scholars, they have other ideas. One fringe theory insists this ritual masks your soul scent from predatory forces. That some things hunt not flesh, but essence. And lying among the dead once a week makes your spirit taste wrong, spoiled, unworthy of collection. You believe that now. Because when you return to your house, you see the candle. It's burned down in a perfect spiral, unnatural, smooth, as if unwinding itself. And the wax pools into a shape you don't dare name. The book is already waiting for you on the table. Another page turned. No sound. No wind. No fingers. But it's waiting. And part of you, shamefully, sleepily, wonders what it will ask next. Because as terrifying as it is, it's keeping you alive. The page is darker this time. Not just in tone, literally darker. The parchment feels scorched around the edges, as if singed by hands that had no right to hold it. You touch it once and pull back. It's not warm, but it feels used, the way a blade feels used after battle. This time, the heading is smeared like soot. Bleed a drop into running water, you exhale. Then chuckle nervously. Of course it wants your blood now. The note beneath is etched in sharp, angular lines, more aggressive, less poetic than before. The stream must carry a part of thee before the full moon, lest the shadows forget thy scent and return to sniff it out. You blink. The language has changed. Less metaphor, more warning. Whatever writes this is done being subtle. But again you don't laugh it off. Not after the grave. Not after waking to find your dog growling at nothing in the corner, eyes fixed on the ceiling where no spider has ever dared weave. You sit back. There's a stream near the edge of the forest. It splits the woods like a scar, fast, shallow, bitter cold even in summer. You used to play there as a child. Built rock towers. Tossed pebbles. Swore you saw fish with too many eyes, but wrote it off as daydreams. Now you aren't so sure. You pack a small knife and a cloth bandage. You don't tell anyone where you're going. Part of you knows you won't come back the same, and it's better they don't see the before and after. As you reach the edge of the woods, something shifts in the light. Not darkness, exactly, more like color leaching from the world. Leaves turn ash gray. The wind forgets how to whistle. Even the birds go quiet, like someone hit pause on the natural world. You reach the stream. It rushes by, as fast as you remember. But the surface doesn't ripple. It pulls. Like it's thirsty. You crouch and draw the knife. Just a nick. That's all. The metal barely kisses your skin, and a single bead wells up. You extend your hand over the stream. The moment the drop falls in, the water reacts. Not splash. Not ripple. Movement. The current stutters, as if startled, then pulses with unnatural rhythm. Something below catches the red, drags it, disperses it like smoke. And for a moment you hear something. Laughter. Far off. Childlike. Too many voices echoing at once, bouncing off trees that don't belong to any forest you know. You pull your hand back. The wound stops bleeding immediately. No need for the cloth. But the skin is strange. Not healed. Just different. Almost like wax. The blood you lost feels permanent, like it wasn't just a drop but a receipt. You gave something. And something took it. Mainstream historians used to think this ritual was symbolic, a simple offering, like ancient pagan customs where blood was poured into rivers to appease local spirits, or gods. But then they started finding things. Bones near remote streams, each with small incisions in the same place, tip of the left index finger, or right palm, precisely measured. Always near solstice markers or lunar alignments. Fringe theorists have their own tales. They whisper that blood remembers. That if a part of you is taken by the flow, it confuses the things that track. Like burning your scent-off clothing so hounds can't find you. Except these aren't hounds. And what they follow isn't smell. You stand up. The forest feels different now. Not safer. Just aware. As you walk back, you notice marks on the trees. Tiny sigils etched just above eye level. You never carved them. They weren't there before. But the wood is fresh. Damp. Something watched. Marked your trail. You don't run. That's how you become prey. Instead, you hum a childhood tune and keep a steady pace. Like nothing's wrong, like you're not bleeding quietly inside from fear. When you return, the village is still asleep. But your house isn't. The candles you didn't light are already flickering. Your mother speaks to someone who isn't in the room. And the book, it's closed now. Waiting. Breathing, maybe? You don't touch it yet. You go to the mirror instead. And that's when you notice the reflection. Your face is yours. But the eyes are wrong. Not darker. Just deeper. Like they've seen things you haven't caught up to yet. You try to smile. The mirror doesn't match. Historians still argue whether these rites were real survival tips or metaphors written by madmen. But they can't explain why the instructions always feel timed. As if tailored. As if they know where you are in the cycle of unraveling. You sit on the edge of your bed. And you realize, you don't feel hunted anymore. But you don't feel safe either. You just feel marked. You turn to the book. It opens without you touching it. You barely have time to blink before the page flips again. No candle, no breeze, no hint of a draft, just the silent turning, like the book itself breathes and pulses with its own secret life. This time, the script is written in swirling gold ink, faded but still shimmering faintly in the firelight. Wear a necklace of thorn and bone, you raise an eyebrow, trying to picture yourself draped in something so morbid. But the book doesn't offer room for debate. Underneath, the note reads, "Guard thy throat and guard thy breath, for the unseen will strike at the softest passage." You rub your neck, suddenly aware of its vulnerability. After all, everyone's heard the stories, how in the dark woods, unseen creatures bite at the throat, stealing breath, leaving nothing but silence. You try not to shudder. You know the mainstream history on necklaces made from bones and thorns. They were common in medieval folk practices, especially among hunters and herbalists, thought to ward off evil spirits and bring luck. Yet historians still argue whether these were spiritual talismans or mere superstitions born of isolation. The fringe side tells a more disturbing story. These necklaces weren't just protective, they were offensive. Crafted to emit a subtle aura of pain and warning, sharp thorns and splintered bone designed to cause harm, or at least discomfort to whatever tried to sneak too close. You look around your small cabin, eyes settling on the carved stick your sister once gave you, wrapped in dried nettle and wild rose thorns. Not quite bone, but a start. The next day, you hike into the woods, collecting the jaggedest twigs and the sharpest thorn clusters. The bones are harder, animal bones scavenged from old kills or the remains of the village dog who passed last winter. As you weave them together with sinew and thread, the necklace begins to feel less like a trinket and more like armor. You put it on, feeling the prick of each thorn against your skin, the hard edges pressing into your collarbone. The forest feels different now. Sharper. The shadows seem to flicker and jump back at your approach, as if the necklace hums a warning only they can hear. Your dog, still uneasy from the grave night and the stream, sniffs your neck and growls softly, but doesn't run. You test the theory, stepping deeper into the forest where the wind carries whispers you don't understand. A sudden rustle. A shadow darting just beyond sight. You hold your breath. The movement freezes. You feel eyes, many of them, on you. You don't move. Minutes pass like hours. Then, the shadow retreats. You exhale slowly. That night you sleep without dreams for the first time in weeks. Historians still debate whether such charms truly deterred supernatural forces or if they simply helped medieval people muster the courage to face the unknown. Meanwhile, fringe researchers suggest that the thorn and bone necklace creates a pain field, a subtle barrier disrupting predator senses beyond human perception. You're not sure what you believe, but you do know this: wearing the necklace has changed how the forest treats you. You are no longer a visitor. You are marked, protected, and maybe, just maybe, a little dangerous. You glance at the book one last time before closing it for the night. And you swear, just for a moment, you see a faint smile in the flicker of candlelight. You wake up to a strange sensation, a dryness in your mouth and a tightness in your chest that wasn't there before. The thorn and bone necklace feels heavier, like it's pressing down on your throat, but you don't take it off. You remember the book's words. Guard thy throat and guard thy breath. So you keep it on, wincing a little at the prick of thorns. Outside, the morning fog clings low, swallowing the forest in a ghostly white haze. You decide to head back toward the edge of the woods, retracing the path near the stream where you bled into the water. Maybe the book's next instruction waits there. Or maybe you're chasing ghosts, your own or something else's. As you step through the mist, the world feels muffled, like you're underwater. Every sound is softened except for a faint whispering carried on the wind, indecipherable but urgent. You stop, trying to catch a word, a name, anything. But it's like the forest itself is breathing secrets just out of reach. You notice something new. Tiny white flowers blooming in the undergrowth, celandine. You remember from old herbal texts that celandine was used as a remedy for poison and skin ailments. But this celandine glows faintly, almost unnaturally, like it's feeding off the fog. You crouch, reaching out to touch one. The petals are cool, almost electric. As your fingers brush the flower, a sudden sharp sting snaps through your skin, like a tiny needle, but then it fades. You pocket a few blossoms anyway, curiosity overriding caution. Back at your cabin, you place the celandine beside the book. The pages flutter again, opening to a fresh instruction. Brew a potion from celandine, the note beneath says. Drink to cleanse what the eye cannot see, and the poison of fear shall pass. You've heard of celandine's medicinal uses, but brewing it into a potion for fear? That's a twist. Historians still argue whether medieval herbal remedies were purely physical, or if they also held symbolic power over the mind and spirit. Fringe scholars claim that certain plants like celandine contained psychoactive compounds that could induce mild hallucinations or visions, sometimes used in secret rituals to confront inner demons or ward off curses. You set a small pot of water over the fire and add the petals, letting them steep. The liquid turns a sickly yellow-green, emitting a faint, bitter aroma that makes your nose wrinkle. You hesitantly sip the potion. It tastes like burnt leaves and sunshine, sharp and oddly comforting. Within minutes, the tension in your chest eases. The whispering outside fades to silence. The heavy cloak of dread lifts, replaced by a quiet clarity. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. The forest no longer feels like a threat but a puzzle, a place of hidden patterns and ancient whispers waiting to be understood. You don't know what's coming next, but for now, the potion has given you a brief reprieve. And that, you think, might just be the point. You wake the next morning before the sun rises, the strange calm from the celandine brew still lingering like the aftertaste of a dream you almost remember. The book is already open when you sit up, no surprise anymore, though the pages have turned far ahead. It's waiting, as if impatient for you to catch up. This time the heading is more cryptic than the rest. Sleep with dirt beneath your tongue. You freeze, reading it again. The small inked line below it reads, "When words fail and signs mislead, the earth remembers what you forget." You close the book slowly and stare out your window at the dew-covered ground. Dirt. Plain old soil. How could that possibly matter? Then again, nothing in this book has exactly screamed normal. You think of burial rituals, of the way early Christians were sometimes buried with a clump of soil from Jerusalem under their tongue, a symbol of divine truth. But that was spiritual metaphor. Here, You're being told to do it literally. Mainstream scholars might call this an example of sympathetic magic, an ancient belief that touching or consuming part of something sacred or powerful can bring its essence into your body. Dirt as memory, as truth. Historians still argue whether such practices were intended for mysticism or simple ritual comfort. But you can't help remembering something else, a fringe theory you stumbled across once, about geomagnetic memory. Some claim soil can hold energetic residue, memories, even, like a living archive of events absorbed by the earth. You gather a handful of moist soil from beneath the tree where your dog first refused to step beyond. It smells of root and rot, alive in a way that makes your skin crawl. But you keep going. You pinch a small clump and roll it between your fingers. Then, slowly, you place it under your tongue. The taste is metallic and cold, like biting into a rusty nail. You lie down. Wait. At first, nothing. Then, something flickers behind your eyelids. Not quite a dream, more like a sensation. You're standing in the woods, but not as they are. They're younger. Wilder. No signs of human presence. Just stone altars half buried in vines and strange totems carved into trees long since fallen in your time. You see people, cloaked figures, kneeling at a circle of stones, pressing dirt into their mouths like communion. One of them looks directly at you. You jolt upright, choking on the taste of soil still stuck beneath your tongue. Your heart pounds. You spit out what's left and scramble for water. Your hands shake, not from fear exactly, but from knowing you were somewhere else, however briefly. The book's ink is still glistening, freshly dried. When words fail and signs mislead, the earth remembers. It wasn't a warning. It was a way to remember. You sit down and stare at your floorboards for a long time. You don't know what those figures were doing, or how you slipped into their vision, but the earth did remember something, and it let you glimpse it. Some historians say ancient rites used soil to bind people to places, to track or protect them. Others scoff at the idea. But there's one thing you now know firsthand. The land here holds memories like blood stains, some washed clean, some stubborn as ever. And tonight, one of those memories looked right at you. You don't sleep the next night. Not because you're afraid, necessarily. More because sleep feels optional now, like a luxury you can't afford when the forest watches, and the dirt whispers secrets from under your tongue. You sit by the fire, the book in your lap, waiting for it to move again. It doesn't. Instead, it just feels heavier. Not in weight. In meaning. Like something inside it has shifted. When you finally pry the pages apart, they're stiff, almost reluctant. Then one lets go with a sharp crack, revealing the next survival entry. Spit on your shadow at dawn, you blink. The note underneath is short. To shake what follows without sound. There's no elaboration. No poetic metaphor this time. Just a line that reads like a dare. You wait until the first light stains the treetops, burnt orange melting into the gray fog of early morning. Then you step outside barefoot, the soil still clinging to your skin from the last ritual. The world is eerily still. Birds haven't even started yet. It feels like you've stepped between moments. You look down. There, stretching out on the cabin wall, is your silhouette. Thin. Crooked. Alive in the golden haze. You hesitate. Then you spit on it. Nothing happens. For a breath. And then the wind shifts. Behind you, something moves. No sound. Just pressure. A presence stepping backward like a dancer caught mid-pose. You spin, but the clearing is empty. Still, the hair on your arms lifts. Something has broken. You return to the book. This time there's no movement, no fluttering pages. Only the whisper of a memory, surfacing. You remember stories your grandmother told about shadows being a soul's echo. How some cultures believed shadows could be stolen, traded, even hunted. The ancient Greeks, for example, used the word eidolon, a spirit image, a shadow self that lingered after death. Historians still argue whether references to shadows in old folk practices were meant metaphorically, warnings to guard one's inner self, or if they were seen as literal, fragile extensions of the soul. But the weirder scholars, the fringe ones? They talk about shadow slippage. The idea that in certain places, during certain times, your shadow might become untethered. Independent. Malicious, even. Spitting on it? A crude but old defense. A way to insult what tries to follow you. Mark your copy of the world as yours and yours alone. You sit in the cabin, lights off, candle flickering. In the reflection of the window, you see your shadow again. It matches your movement, almost. There's a flicker. A tiny delay. You try not to panic. You remember the text. To shake what follows without sound. Maybe whatever watched you from the forest, or stared at you in that dirt vision, didn't need to walk on legs or speak in a voice. Maybe it just needed to follow. Quietly. And maybe now, it can't. For the first time in days, you feel, not safe, exactly, but like you've taken a step ahead of something that was gaining on you. The book lies still, but you swear it's warmer than before. Or maybe that's just your hands, trembling just a bit less now. You're starting to lose track of time. Not days exactly, just the way they blur together now. You eat because your stomach reminds you. You sleep in fragments. You've stopped checking your phone altogether. No one's calling. You're not even sure the signal reaches out here anymore. The book feels more real than any digital ping ever did. And this morning, before the sun even considered rising, it opened again. Lead into bark when the sky is red. You stare at the sentence for a long time. There's no secondary note this time. Just a bold, claw-like ink etched deep into the parchment. You step outside before questioning it. The sky is red. Not in the metaphorical sense. Actually, eerily red. You don't remember seeing anything in the forecast about a dust storm, or wildfires. But here it is, sunlight bent wrong, casting a rust-colored glow across the treetops. You don't question the timing anymore. You just fetch your pocket knife. You find a tree, a crooked, silver-barked one near the base of the ridge behind the cabin. You place your palm against it. The bark is warm, pulsing slightly beneath your fingers like something living beneath skin. You make a shallow cut on your fingertip and press it to the tree. The blood smears easily. Soaks in. You wait. Nothing happens. Then, slowly, the tree exhales. Not literally, of course, but the air around you dips, collapses, like a lung letting go. The branches shift without wind. The leaves shimmer. And for one impossible moment, you feel connected. Like the tree has accepted something from you, and offered something back. A memory not yours. You see a man, 13th century maybe, from the layers of cloth and heavy cloak. He's doing the same thing. Pressing a bleeding palm against bark. Around him, others do the same in silence. A ritual. A pact? You're not in the vision so much as hovering beside it, caught in some emotional echo. The man isn't afraid. He's focused. The others, though, they're tense. Glancing at the sky. Whispering things you can't hear. The sky is red. Historians still argue whether red skies were always treated as bad omens. Some say it was linked to natural phenomena, dust in the atmosphere, volcanic ash, refracted light. But others believe a crimson dawn meant something far more sinister. A thinning of the veil. A doorway opening. You come back to yourself with your hands still pressed to the tree. Your blood long since dried. You take a step back and notice something disturbing. The tree you chose? It already had faint stains on its trunk. Old, brown-red blotches in nearly the same spot you bled into. You weren't the first. There's an old theory that trees, especially old ones, act as natural record keepers. Not just in their rings, but in a more esoteric sense. That sap, especially when mingled with human blood, forms a kind of organic archive. It's not a popular theory. Most scholars dismiss it as fantasy. But the weird ones? The ones who study tree worship and forest rites? They believe. They say bleeding into bark can tie you to a place. Bind you in exchange for protection. Or maybe warn the trees what's coming, so they don't reject you. Whatever that means. As you walk back to the cabin, you glance back at the silver-barked tree. It looks unchanged. But now, for the first time, the forest feels like it knows who you are. And that, more than anything else so far, makes your skin crawl. Sleep comes oddly easy that night. Your body is exhausted, of course, every limb heavy like wet cloth. But more than that, the forest feels quiet. Not peaceful, exactly. Just less watchful. You dream of trees speaking in a language made of wind. And when you wake, the book has turned a page again. Smear clay behind the eyes before the eclipse. You sit up fast. Blink. Is there an eclipse scheduled? You didn't think so. But something in your gut clenches. You reach for your phone to check the date. Finally, some modern intervention. The signal bar flickers, and for the first time in days, the screen loads a weather app. You scroll. Pause. Then curse under your breath. There's a partial lunar eclipse tonight. Not full, but enough to count. Of course there is. You head outside. The air feels different again, colder, but not from weather. It's the type of cold that seems to sink into your clothes, cling to your spine. And the animals are quiet. No birdsong. No squirrel chatter. The forest holds its breath. You dig. The note didn't say what kind of clay, so you trust your instincts and head toward the edge of the creek. Your hands find it beneath the roots, thick, soft, red-brown earth. Cool to the touch. It smells faintly metallic, like blood and rust and something older than bone. You bring it back to the cabin in a glass jar and wait for nightfall. You smear the clay behind each eye as the moon starts to dim. It dries quickly, cooling, tingling. You feel ridiculous. Then your vision shifts. At first it's subtle. The shadows deepen. The lines between branches get sharper. And then, slowly, the world around you reveals something it had kept hidden all along. There are shapes in the trees. Not people. Not animals. Just wrongness. Glimmers of movement that bend the eye. Figures too tall, too thin, standing motionless among the trunks. They do not breathe. They do not blink. But they are there. Watching. You step back. The clay burns slightly now, but you don't wipe it off. One of the figures tilts its head. The book said nothing about what would happen after you smeared the clay. No warning, no instruction. Just the act itself. So you stare back. And after a moment, they vanish. One by one. Like breath on glass. You fall to your knees. It takes you a long time to stand again. Historians still argue whether clay in ancient rituals was meant for concealment or vision. Some cultures used it to ward off evil spirits, others to invite the second sight. The line between protection and summoning, it seems, is thin. And sometimes it's the same act with different intent. In a strange way, the clay trick feels like a hinge. Like everything before it was prep work. And everything after will be real. You wash your face at the creek, but your skin still tingles. You look up at the sky. The moon has gone dark. Just a sliver remains, and the stars feel sharper tonight, somehow colder. You return to the cabin, but you don't go inside. Instead, you sit on the step and wait for the eclipse to end. And while you wait, the forest hums. Low, steady, almost melodic. You don't know if it's in your ears, or under your skin. But you know the next page will be the worst one yet. The clay may be gone from your skin, but something lingers. You see it in the way your fingers tremble when you turn the page. In how the air bends slightly at the edge of your vision. As if the forest hasn't quite forgotten what you saw last night, and neither have you. Keep ashes of a burnt wasp nest in your left boot. You stare at the instruction. There's no lead up this time. No vague prose or cryptic diagram. Just a direct command written in the same jagged, inky scrawl. The kind of handwriting that looks like it was done by someone trying to get the words down before forgetting them. Or being caught. You don't even question it anymore. You lace up your boots, grab the small hatchet from beside the door, and step into the dawn haze. There's a tightness in your chest now, as if your body is bracing for something before your mind has caught up. You don't have to look long. About 20 feet off the trail, hanging like a bulbous gray tumor from a leaning pine, is a wasp nest. You get closer, and your stomach turns. It's not abandoned. Wasps crawl lazily across the papery surface, wings clicking, legs twitching like a collective mind waking from slumber. You hesitate. This feels mean, stupid, dangerous. But again, you're past the point of hesitation. This isn't about comfort. It hasn't been for a while. You retreat, find an old metal bucket behind the cabin, fill it with kindling, and carry it back. A bit of lamp oil. A long match. A small, whispered apology you're not sure who to direct to. You light the fire. The flames rise, crackle, catch the edges of the nest. At first, it just smokes. The wasps inside twitch, boil, pour out in chaotic swarms. A few come toward you, angry, stuttering darts, but the smoke drives them back. Eventually, the nest drops whole into the fire. The flame blooms higher, golden orange against the early blue sky, and then collapses. All that's left are charred flakes, blackened stubs, and the bitter stink of scorched insect. You wait for it to cool, then take a spoon from your pocket and scoop the ashes into a small pouch. You carry it like it might bite you, cradled with care, and empty it into the left boot, tucking it beneath your heel. The moment you do, the forest tilts. Not literally. You're not thrown to the ground. But you feel it, some subtle shift in gravity, as if the ground itself leaned toward you for a moment. And in that lean, something notices. Your vision sharpens again, but differently this time. It's not the clay. It's proximity. The boot ash is tuning you like a dial. And what you hear, what you feel, buzzing. Not in your ear. Not around you. Inside you. A low, vibrating hum behind your ribs, like the memory of a hive. As if your blood now remembers flight, sting, swarm. You take a breath. The air tastes electric. You can't shake the feeling that the book is starting to build something. That each weird tip has been a brick, and now the shape is starting to form. Some of the instructions, in isolation, were laughable. But taken together? It's hard to deny the pattern. Historians still argue whether these kinds of survival practices were based on observation, myth, or ritual. Wasp nest ashes, in particular, appear in old Persian medical texts and European superstition alike, sometimes used for immunity, sometimes for dream control, sometimes simply to keep spirits away from the feet. Whatever that means. You walk a slow lap around the cabin. The buzzing doesn't fade, but you start to make sense of it. Not words exactly, but a rhythm. A pattern. It's a warning. You realize you haven't seen another person in how long now? Since you found the book? Since before? No hikers. No campers. Not even a ranger patrol. You check your phone again, still one bar. No notifications. No missed calls. Just a blank screen, like the world forgot you. A wasp lands on your wrist. It doesn't sting. It just sits there, wings twitching. You look into its glossy, black eyes and feel something. Recognition? A message? Then it lifts off, arcs into the air, and vanishes into the trees. You return to the book. The page has shifted slightly in the breeze. The next instruction peeks out from the fold, and you know, just know, it's going to be the strangest one yet. But your boot feels solid now. Grounded. And not just physically. The kind of grounding that makes your next breath deeper, your steps steadier. Like some ancient swarm has decided, begrudgingly, to keep watch. You sit on the porch as the sun dips behind the tree line, and you wait for nightfall again. The air tonight is too still. Not the calm kind of stillness, like a lake at dawn, but the tense, unnatural silence that comes before a predator strikes. No chirping crickets. No rustling leaves. Just that familiar hum beneath your ribs, the one seated by ash and old ritual. And the book waits, open to its next absurd suggestion. Sleep beneath a mirror on the new moon, right? Because of course it does. You run your finger over the page. There's a faint smudge in the margin, like someone, long ago, had paused on this one too. Maybe they hesitated. Maybe they didn't make it past this tip. But it's your turn now. The mirror in the cabin is small and round, maybe the size of a dinner plate. It's old, too, framed in flaking brass, its glass rippled at the edges like something half melted. You try not to look too hard. Your reflection there doesn't feel synced. Like it's watching you just a millisecond late. You turn it over. There, scratched faintly into the backing, are initials. 3 of them. And a date, 1297. You shiver. Same century as the book. You don't bother questioning how it got here. Instead, you carry the mirror out with your sleeping roll and set it gently face down above your pillow. The book is clear. The mirror must rest directly above you, not beside, not below. It must face down, catching nothing but the darkness between your dreams and the glass. You lie back. Feel the grit of ash under your heel, the weight of clay memory in your bones, and the cold stare of the mirror just inches from your brow. Why a mirror? Historians still argue about the use of reflective surfaces in medieval occult practices. Mirrors were rare and expensive, status symbols, sure, but also tools of magic, scrying, and self-reflection. Some believed mirrors could trap dreams. Others feared they could open doorways. A few 13th century texts even warned against sleeping near any reflective surface during the new moon, when the veil is thin and selves are not alone. Comforting. You shut your eyes. At first, nothing happens. Then something shifts. Not sound, weight. The mirror feels heavier above you. Like gravity's double just for it. Your chest tightens. You can't move. Not sleep paralysis, exactly, but something adjacent. Your mind is awake. Hyper-aware. But your body? Still. Soft. Invited. And that's when you feel the mirror looking back. Not through vision. Through presence. It sees what you see, but backward. Reflected. Reversed. The dreams come slowly. You're standing in a corridor, endless stone, torchlit. You move forward, but the light stays behind you, so that your own shadow leads the way. That's the first wrong thing. The second wrong thing is the sound. Not the buzzing anymore, no. It's dripping. You glance up. The ceiling is mirrored, stretching into infinity, and somewhere high above, in the dark reflection of this corridor, someone is walking directly above you. Same pace. Same stride. But you don't think it's you. You stop walking. They do not. You wake gasping. The mirror hasn't moved. But there's condensation on the inside of the glass. A perfect circle of breath, as if someone pressed their mouth to it, just above your face. You sit up slowly. The fire's gone cold. The trees creak. The buzzing in your chest has dimmed, like the hive is listening rather than speaking. And in that silence, you feel it. Something's changed. You don't know if it's a good thing. You take the mirror, wrap it in a towel, and place it back on the wall. You avoid looking directly into it, but in the corner of your eye, you could swear the reflection is still breathing. A rational voice inside you, faint, but present, suggests that all of this could be a stress dream. That isolation, hunger, and old books are messing with your brain. But that voice is starting to sound outnumbered. You walk the edge of the tree line before dawn. Something has moved through the forest overnight. Big. Slow. Intentional. The kind of movement that leaves trees tilted, moss peeled back, and silence in its wake. You crouch and touch the dirt. There's a print. Not of a boot. Not a paw. A hand. But oversized. Elongated. Like 5 bones dragged through the earth in tandem. And pressed so deep into the soil you wonder how anything could walk upright with that kind of weight. You don't follow the tracks. Not yet. Because when you return to the book, the next page is already turned. Like it knew you would wake up. And waiting there, clean and sharp and scrawled in desperate ink, is the final tip. And somehow you already know. It's going to take more than clay, ash, or mirror to survive what comes next. You don't want to turn the page. But you do. Because after everything, the ash circles, the dead man's shoes, the fermented milk in your hair like some nightmarish shampoo, how could you not? This has to be the last one. The final weird survival tip from a book that's outlived kings, plagues, and probably a few curious readers just like you. And there it is, etched with ink so dark it almost bleeds. Speak to the soil. But only once. You blink. That's it. No diagrams. No footnotes. No helpful warnings in Latin about losing your soul or attracting swamp wraiths. Just 7 words. You whisper them aloud, almost without meaning to. Speak to the soil. But only once. And as soon as you do, the buzzing returns. Not the soft, nervous kind that's lived in your ribs since part 1. This is louder. Purposeful. Like something enormous has rolled over in the deep dark of the earth, and heard you. You step back from the book. A breeze stirs the dust. The trees seem to lean inward, as though curious, or maybe bracing. You glance around. Nothing visibly changes. And yet, you suddenly know what to say. The book doesn't tell you. No instructions. But it's in your bones now, like everything else you've absorbed. Somewhere in the marrow of your spine, a phrase rises. Old. Crooked. Like a root that's grown sideways underground for centuries. So you kneel. Press one hand to the dirt just outside the cabin. The soil is damp. Warm. And you whisper, I know your name. And I am still here. The earth exhales. It's not wind. Wind moves across the surface. This moves through. A deep tremble, like the forest letting out a breath it's held for 1,000 years. Leaves rattle, low and slow. Your teeth ache with the vibration. Then silence. You wait. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. You feel almost cheated. But then you hear it. Something answers back. From below. Not in words. In feeling. Welcome. Warning. Agreement. Hunger. All of it at once. Like an emotion layered and compressed until it becomes language only dirt understands. The forest hums with it. You stumble backward. The soil shifts beneath your feet, but not enough to sink. Just enough to suggest it could. The buzzing fades. And for the first time in days, you feel a weight lift from your chest. Like something's been resolved. Not solved, acknowledged. A truce with whatever's been watching. Or waiting. The mirror, the ash, the milk, the shoes, the fire, they weren't solutions. They were invitations. Proof that you were willing to speak the language of the old world, however absurd it sounded. And now that you've spoken to the soil, your one aloud whisper, it's spoken back. You sit on the cabin's porch as the sky grays with pre-dawn. The book lies closed beside you. Somehow you know it won't open again. Not for you. You wonder who the last person was who made it this far. Who muttered into the ground and walked away intact. If they walked away at all. The path back to town will be long. Muddy. And likely. Strange. But you'll make it. Because somehow, you've earned the forest's tolerance. Not its affection, let's not get crazy. But maybe, just maybe, you've earned the right to leave it behind. For now. As the first rays of sun slip through the trees, you stand. Stretch. The ache in your bones feels older than your years now. Like you've carried someone else's memories, someone else's history, through the night. And maybe you have. The buzzing is gone. But sometimes, as you walk away, your feet still feel warm from the soil. Like it remembers you. And just maybe, it's listening still. The forest grows quieter with each step you take, as though it's tucking itself back into slumber now that your part in its strange little ritual is done. The trees no longer leer. The air feels less dense. And somewhere deep in your chest, that ever-present tension, the one that coiled like a sleeping snake when you first cracked open the book, loosens. Slowly. Like a long-held breath finally released. You walk a little slower now. The ground is soft underfoot, giving just enough to remind you that it's still listening. Still aware. But it's not threatening anymore, just present. Like an old neighbor watching from behind a curtain, nodding slightly as you pass. Your body aches. Your mind is tired. But it's a good tired. The kind that settles behind your eyes like a heavy quilt, not painful, not panicked, just a quiet invitation to rest. You glance back once, and though the cabin is long out of sight, you picture it clearly. Dust and parchment. Firelight flickering over a coverless book that may have closed itself the moment you left. Maybe it's already gone. Or maybe it waits there, knowing someone else will find it one day and need it like you did. But not tonight. Tonight the trees thin out. The path straightens. The breeze hums with a different rhythm now, less warning, more lullaby. You don't need to understand it all. You don't need answers wrapped in logic. You just need to keep walking, keep breathing, and let the weight of old secrets settle behind you. You did well. You're safe now. And as the world softens around you, bit by bit, leaf by leaf, you finally feel it, the gentle hush of things returning to silence. Sleep well, friend.